The Genshin Impact versus Wuthering Waves fight is insane. These people are going feral over these games. I've never seen two communities go so hard at each other before. We have the Genshin stance saying that Wuwa is just a ripoff Genshin, and then we have the Wuthering Wave players who go out of their way to antagonize and insult anyone who plays Genshin. Like, you really can't hate on someone for liking a game. This is how it's been for the past few weeks since Wuwa came out. It's clear that a lot of the Genshin online community hates Wuwa with a passion, but what about the in-game community? I think a lot of people know that Genshin's in-game community is way different from the online community. A lot of people say that the community is toxic or delusional, and there's just a ton of like horror stories involving the Genshin online community. On the other hand, everyone says that the in-game community is like kind of like cute and wholesome. They send little stickers after every text, and they even let you ravage their world for materials. So in this video, I'm going to be asking in-game Genshin players what they think about Wuthering Waves, because for all we know, the Wuwa haters could just be a loud minority. I'll read off the questions I asked everyone. I recommend you also answer these questions in your head so you can compare your answers to the players I interviewed. Starting with, when did you start playing Genshin? How often do you play now? Do you keep up with the Genshin online community like YouTube or Twitter? What do you think about Wuthering Waves? Have you played it? Which game do you prefer and why? Genshin or Wuthering Waves? And those are the main questions. I interviewed around 25 players. I know that sample size is way too small to get a good idea of what the entire in-game community thinks, but it'll at least give us a rough idea. I was originally going to interview 100 players. Not that that's a big enough sample size either, but this shit was tedious as hell. So I just said, fuck it, we chilling at 25. I'm only gonna go over my favorite chats just to save time, and then I'm gonna go over the statistics at the end, like how only 23% of players interviewed keep up with the online Genshin community. I hop into my first co-op and I says to him, I says, mind if I ask you a few questions while I ravage your world for mats? And I immediately got kicked. I think it's because I said I was gonna ravage his world for mats, because after I got kicked, I changed the question to mind if I ask you a few questions, and I only got positive responses after that. Though some people were a bit weirded out until I started asking them the actual questions, because I didn't really specify what I was gonna be asking questions about. Some people sent confused and concerned stickers. You can see the red flags popping up in their heads. Only a few people reacted this way, but the same thing could have been running through everyone's head. I can only imagine what they were thinking. So I ended up changing the intro question to include some more context, and I also changed a few other questions as I went along to make things more clear for the people I'm asking. Alright, so I enter this guy's world and he says hola and sends a little EULA sticker. I say, yo, mind if I ask you a few questions? He's like, okay. When did you start playing Genshin? 2022. How often do you play now? Almost every day. And then I ask about the Genshin online community. I say, do you keep up with the Genshin online community like YouTube and Twitter? And he's like, yes. You can tell he's like he starts to get a bit sussed out. And then I'm like, okay. And I move on to the next question. What do you think about Wuthering Waves? Have you played it? And he says yes, and then he sends a Yanfei, I'm guessing it's a Yanfei scared emoji. It's kind of hard to tell. I was a bit confused by that. And then he sends a fucking a Azdoha sticker. I didn't know what the hell was going through his head. Yeah, I followed up and I asked, what do you think about it? And he kicked me. I don't know if he thought I was a Wuwa hater. I don't know if he thought I was a Genshin hater, but I'm assuming he only kicked me because of all the fucking fighting that's been going on between the two communities. But yeah, he was obviously spooked by my question, so this lets you know how afraid some people are of this topic. He was the only one to kick me though, so yeah, that's something. Everyone else I asked about Wuwa really didn't care that much, at least from what I could tell. I don't know what he thought I was gonna do. Like, what's the worst thing I could possibly say?
You serve zero purpose. You should kill yourself now.
Yo, mind if I ask you a few questions? Sure. When did you start playing Genshin? And this dude says 2018. Bro's a fucking dev. He says I can't recall exactly. Since launch. And I tell him it came out 2020. And he says, so since launch. Lol. Lemao. 2018 is insane. How often do you play now? Every day. Do you keep up with the Genshin online community like YouTube and Twitter? No. I hate them all. And then he asked me, are you IBGE? And I'm like, what is that? And then he sends this shit. I feel like this dude's insulting me in another language. I tell him I only speak English, and he says no problem. Any more questions? I asked him what he thinks about Wuthering Waves and if he's played it, and he says he hasn't played it. The conversation ends there, but looking back at it, I should have asked him if he had a opinion on Wuthering Waves, and I think I do make this mistake a lot more going forward. A lot of people who haven't played it, I really didn't get a good idea of what they think about the game, just from like trailers and like other people talking about it and stuff like that. Yo, mind if I ask you a few quick questions? Sure. When did you start playing Genshin? I know this guy's black. This is how all of my friends respond when they fucking get a question that they're not sure about. He says 2 banners before Ito's first banner, and I'm like, okay, that's like 2.4 or something. I think that was 2.2. How often do you play now? I play every day, lol. I ask him if he keeps up with the online Genshin community. He says, not really. I ask him about Wuthering Waves and if he's played it. And he said, yeah, I played, then I got lazy immediately because it's like starting all over, which is totally understandable. I asked him which game he prefers and why, and he says Genshin. He asked if this was a survey, and I mean, at this point, it basically is. I asked him what his favorite thing about Genshin was, and he said exploring and wishing. And that's where that conversation ends. This guy sends a little Mona with a heart sticker. I'm not even gonna try to read this out, but yeah, this guy certainly is a personality. He says ja ja ja. Is he trying to do like the One Piece laugh? Isn't that like Blackbeard's laugh or something? I can't think of any other reason he would say ja ja ja. After that, he says hi, and then he's like, okay. I guess I was typing a bit too fast for him. These are a bit delayed. But when he says okay, you can tell he's like a bit sussed out by me asking if I can ask him a few quick questions. And then he sends this like concerned Tartaglia sticker. I asked him when he started playing Genshin, and then he's like, oh, normal questions. Jeez. He started playing in 2021 in March. How often do you play now? Well, now, like every day, but usually leave the game for 1 year. Ja 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 ja. Yeah, I feel like a lot of veterans of Genshin play like once a year at this point. Me personally, I only play every time there's a new Archon quest, and and we only get 4 a year, so I'm like rarely on the game. Do you keep up with the Genshin online community? No. And sends a little venti sticker. What do you think about Wuthering Waves? Have you played it? And he sends a 9. And I was really confused by this. I thought it was just him saying no, because doesn't 9 mean like no in German, or at least that's what I was going through my head. And so I was just like, okay. And then he says, yep, I loved it. So I guess the 9 was a mistake. Which game do you prefer and why? And he says Genshin. I just feel more comfortable here. And that's pretty much it for that conversation. This was probably my favorite one by far. And those were just some of my favorite chats, but now let's move on to the statistics I got. I asked everyone when they started playing Genshin, because if you're still within your first year of playing Genshin, you're going to be more committed than someone who's been playing for 2 to 3 years, because they just have more content to do and they still might be in their honeymoon phase, which means they probably haven't given Wuthering Waves a shot because they're so focused on Genshin at the moment. Looking back at the answers I got, I realized that this was a stupid question, because I can only match with players adventuring 55 or higher. Players that are AR 55 can still be in this content phase, but they only have a few months left before they're just logging in for daily commissions. 27% of players interviewed started playing Genshin last year or sometime before Fontaine, which would be almost a year before now. 15% started playing Genshin over 2 years ago, and 58% of players started over 3 years ago or around launch. I did ask everyone how often they played Genshin, and 66% of players interviewed said that they play every day. 19% of players play most days of the week, and 15% only play a few days a week. This kind of surprised me, because I didn't think people that started Genshin at least 2 years ago still played every day in 2024. Like, what content are you doing every day? I know all your characters are built. I know you've explored most of the map, and I know you've completed all your quests. What are you doing every day? Well, some players told me that they just log in for daily commissions and just get off, which makes sense. If I wasn't on the grind trying to make money online, then I'd probably be doing the same thing. A few players also told me that they take extended breaks from the game, ranging anywhere from a month to a year. This could be due to lack of content or burnout, and when they return, they're refreshed and ready to get back into the game. And they'll have lots of content to do too. Well, kinda. Just a few regions and some quests, maybe. We really need permanent events. I just have a whole backlog of permanent events in Honkai Star Rail from previous patches. There's always something to do on Honkai. The next question I asked was, do you keep up with the Genshin community? 23% of players interviewed said yes, 27% said rarely, and 50% said no. I'm not surprised. I'm always the one to tell my friends about Genshin drama or news in the friend group. None of my friends ever keep up with the online community because there really is no reason to do so. If it wasn't for Tectone absolutely carrying my interest for Genshin and gacha games as a whole, I wouldn't know shit about the communities and the CCs, nor would I be interested. A lot of players reacted pretty negatively to this question. One guy said that the community is toxic, and another player said that he blocks every Genshin fan on Twitter, which makes sense because the online community has a very bad reputation. It's just kind of a shame that the online and in-game communities are so split, because imagine if we could just all band together and say fuck Hoyo, forcing them to fix the game. But obviously there's no way to communicate that to the in-game community. Now we're on the discussion about Wuthering Waves, where I ask each player about their thoughts on WoW and if they've played it. A whopping 78% of players interviewed have played Wuthering Waves. 15% of players have heard of it but haven't played, while 7% of players don't even know what it is. Most of the players who haven't played WoW are open to playing but haven't due to reasons like storage or time. I'm not gonna lie, more people played it than I thought, and out of the people who played it, 85% of them liked the game. I think we all know why a Genshin player would like WoW, but some of the people I asked didn't like the game. Really didn't get to ask them why, that's my bad. But people who did like the game had a few complaints. I had a few guys say that they didn't like the controls, which was something I was confused about, because I thought WoW and Genshin had identical controls. But one guy said he was on mobile, so the others might be on mobile too. And WoW's combat is a lot more complex than Genshin, so there might be like a lot more buttons clogging up the screen. I don't know, I'm just guessing. Some people said it was laggy. I think everyone's experiencing at least a little bit of stuttering or lag. I have to wait a few minutes for the stuttering to stop every time I get on. And the guy from earlier said it felt like starting Genshin all over again, which is so true. WoW is fun at the start, but I put the game down once I hit level 35, because where I am, it's just echo farming until I hit level 40, which requires so much XP. The game starts to go so slow. I'd rather hit 40 by doing 1.1 quest over just grinding echoes for a week straight. The final question is for the players who have played Wuthering Waves. Which game do you prefer, Genshin or WoW? And 89% of players interviewed said that they preferred Genshin over WoW. Looking back at the answers, I realized that this was also a stupid question, because if they preferred Wuthering Waves, then they probably wouldn't be on Genshin right now. Some people who chose Genshin did have trouble deciding, which means they only like Genshin slightly better. I even had one guy who said he couldn't decide. He just said both games are great, and I think that's good. Wuthering Waves is turning out to be good competition for Genshin. Some of the reasons for people liking Genshin more are the characters and graphics, but most people said it was because they were too committed or invested into Genshin. Kinda like a cost or time sunk fallacy. And that's all of my statistics. I have a Google Sheets document of all the questions and answers I got, linked down in the description if you ever want to use it to like prove a point or something. This was a very interesting video to make. We don't get to see these players' opinions often, so that's really cool. Going through and asking people questions one by one is a pain, but I think it'll make for some good content. I already have a bunch of more questions that I want to ask, and we can even do the same thing in Wuthering Waves too. If you have any good questions you want me to ask the endgame Genshin or WoW communities, comment them below. And if you've made it this far, then you'll probably enjoy my future videos, which means you might as well subscribe.